you don't have your life anymore. It's just food and it's just how you look. And that's not what life is supposed to be about.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome back to Making Space. Not just a podcast, but a place for honest, open conversations about where people have been and who they're becoming. This has probably been the fastest year of my life, so I'm not surprised that season 2 flew by. I am so incredibly grateful that I've been able to continue making space for important conversations this season, and I've learned so much from my guests and all of you that listen. Along with the theme of growing up, I've grown a lot this year, and it's crazy to think about where I was mentally, physically, and emotionally during the last episode of season 1 and where I am today. My life looks completely different, but it's still good. Thank you for listening through the ups and downs and for continuing to support this podcast. We will be on hiatus for a while, but the podcast will be back next year. I'm also looking forward to trying new things in season 3, so stay tuned for that. I'm so excited to be doing this episode with my friend Avery. We met in Boston a few years ago when we attended the same Bible study and quickly bonded over our love for dance. After moving to a new city, she was one of the first people I could truly be myself around, which was such a blessing. I found so much freedom in our friendship, and now we both live in New York, so she's never getting rid of me. I feel like the way we look is one of those things that everybody thinks about, but doesn't necessarily talk about. It can be really vulnerable to admit that you don't always like what you see in the mirror. I know body image and relationship with food can be sensitive topics, but ultimately I hope our conversation encourages you to love yourself as you are right now. Content warning that we'll be talking about eating disorders for part of the episode. I've included timestamps in the description box, so please reference those if you want to skip over anything. With that, let's get into the conversation. So, what is something you have learned or that you're currently learning that you wish your younger self could have known?
There's a lot of different versions of myself I could go back to and talk to, but on this theme of body image, I would go back to 15-year-old me who was at the time very overwhelmed with food and diet culture to the point that it led to an eating disorder, where my biggest fear was gaining weight. So I would say it's okay to gain weight and it's normal and you're not going to stay in your body or like that, I guess, I don't know if this is the right word, but prepubescent body forever. And womanhood is just different and that's okay. And just kind of give myself that affirmation of just not being scared. And eventually, like, I did gain weight and like, you know, my weight fluctuated a lot throughout those years through college. Yes, freshman 15 happens, but that's okay. But then I lost some of that and that's also okay too.
Yeah. So can you take me back? So what kind of incited that interest in like diet culture? Was it going through puberty and like seeing your body start to change, or what kind of led you there?
Yeah, so I was never like I never had the intention of losing weight or anything. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to eat healthier, like, or oh my goodness, like I want to eat healthier. I'm going to get into this, but I was just so overwhelmed. I'm a dietitian, and that's one of the reasons I decided to study nutrition is because there's so much information and misinformation out there. But then as a consumer, it's overwhelming. So basically, I was just taking everything at face value. And then basically at that point, it's like, what do I eat? Nothing, you know? And so it kind of led to that. And then I got to a certain weight and seeing myself at a certain size is when just in my head something clicked. And, you know, people would say things like, oh, you look so good or whatever. And something clicked. And that's when it became about weight. So it never used to, but it already was this weird relationship with food that led to like, oh, now like you're at a certain size and it's scary to be at a bigger size for some reason.
Interesting. And so like, did people around you notice that something was changing? I feel like, especially with eating disorders, it can be more like a silent thing that you're going through. But you said people were commenting on your weight changing, like commenting positively.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, oh, you have abs, or, oh, like, would love to look like that. So it was mostly positive, but then it's also very isolating, you know, when you're not, I would like make up excuses to not go out to eat. And I remember it led to a friend's fight because I made up a lie. I like flat out lied about it being, oh, like I can't afford going out, which like, yes, going out to eat is expensive, but that's not why I didn't want to go out to eat.
Yeah.
And then we were all fighting about money, which is not what I should have just been straight up and being like, oh, I'm scared of eating food. That's not whatever I was concerned about not eating.
Yeah. And so what kind of led you out of that mindset or that thought pattern?
Honestly, and I should have, like looking back, I should have gone to a registered dietitian or someone like a pro in that. But I found just kind of the intuitive eating mindfulness space on, I think it was YouTube. And just this one creator was talking about just listening to your body. And she had some handbook and just information that was very helpful in what I needed to hear at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And right as I was going into college, I realized like, I am terrified of food and terrified of not just gaining weight, but terrified of like chemicals in food. And just to the point, it was just this obsession that was very, very isolating because our friendships revolve around food. You go out to eat with friends, you have events, birthdays, and food is involved with that. And if you decide like, oh, I am too good for that. It's called orthorexia mostly. And it led to like more of an anorexia is what I had. But orthorexia is where it started. It's like, I'm better than you because I don't put this food into my body. So it's very an isolating kind of thing that I put myself into.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point about how a lot of our friendships do revolve around food or like your socializing time, especially at that point you were in school and like that's when you socialize with other people is when you're eating. But if there are like a lot of things that you feel like you can't eat and you don't want to have to explain it, so you would just like not do the socializing instead of having to like work around that.
Or just lie, which I did that too.
And so did people find out about it or did you share with anyone?
I think I shared after the fact when I realized it was a problem, but it did lead to, like, I remember I went on a cruise with a friend, and at that time I was doing like, high carb, low fat, or I was like terrified of oil. That's what I was scared of. And she was a different size than me, and I just remember it. There were exchanged looks with her and her mom, and it kind of led slowly to an end of a friendship. And I look back and like she's still in my high school hometown. And I want to like talk to her about it and say like, hey, this is like, I'm so sorry that also it was like over exercising too. I feel like a lot of this end of our friendship was because of that. And I miss you. And I miss before my life revolved around food and being better than, or what I thought was better than her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were how old at that time?
I want to say like 15, 16.
Yeah, you were like young at that time and like now looking back obviously this is like 10 years later you could have a different
I can't believe it was 10 years ago.
No,
Oh my
literally.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
You could see things in a different way. But I feel like at that age, it really is like everything just seems so huge and like crushing on you. And especially when you're getting that external validation from other people. So I'm sure at the time you didn't realize something was wrong. I don't know. Did you think something was wrong? Like the way that you were looking at food and like exercising? Or did you think this was you being healthy?
Yeah, well, because society praises that. They praise exercise and they praise eating healthy. So I thought I was like totally valid. And to a certain extent, sure, like exercise is great for you, but to a certain extent,
Yeah.
it's like it's everything in moderation because I was not doing things in moderation. It was to the point where like a rest day would have done me a lot of good, and like so would eating a cookie. That would have like actually been more healing, which is what I did in college. Is when I started, I remember being emotional about like eating food that I used to be scared of because I was like, I've come so far. And like no one else, it was weird to like try to explain that to even my therapist. Like I used to be scared of these foods, like actually scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is weird now because I'm like, trying down a vegan milkshake.
Yeah, no, I think that idea of being scared of food because it's like you need it to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's just not something that people really feel comfortable talking about, because one, they may not realize that it's a thing that they're struggling with, but then two, it can be hard to understand for someone who hasn't experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I'm saying, like hearing you explain it is helpful for me because you're talking about like what you were thinking and what kind of led to that. But if you haven't gone through it, I feel like it's kind of hard to understand. And so going back to what you started with, kind of like this idea of being comfortable with your body changing. Yeah, I feel like I've been thinking about that more, just like the topic of body image generally, in a way that I hadn't necessarily before. And I don't even exactly know what it is. Cause like you said, it is true. That's a part of getting older is your body changes. You go through different life experiences. And so it's like the sooner you get comfortable with that, I feel like the better,
Yeah.
because it's only going to continue, or just like aging, the aging process in general, your body changes. But yeah, do you feel like experiencing having an eating disorder and coming out on the other side and learning to love yourself, do you feel like that has helped you as your body has changed over time as you've gotten older?
Yeah, I mean, it's still hard, and it's still, especially like when clothes change, and like I've definitely had conversations with like the first time I gained a bunch of weight, and like granted it was pretty like it was a lot and it was pretty drastic like when I gained weight in college, but my mom like was not great about it and she made comments, and I was always praised for like being healthy and like all of that. So then to see me on the other side and like have comments. So I went to school in Alabama, and then when I even like people I worked with were like, "Oh, you like grew up this
Oh my
like just like
gosh.
awkward things that you would hear." And then my mom would be like, "Oh, that double chin," just like really like hurtful things, and
Yeah.
just being like, and again, I didn't have professional help when I originally like I had a therapist that helped me, but like I wasn't seeing a dietitian. I was just like I needed that initial weight gain, even though that's not
Yeah.
wasn't like my healthy weight, but I still needed that mentally to be
Yeah.
there. But again, like when I moved to New York, I gained a little bit of weight too. I started training for a marathon, and I told my therapist about it. I told her like, yeah, I gained weight like training for the marathon. Like it's hard knowing, or kind of like that mindset of like, oh, my mom's going to say something again. Like again, it wasn't as drastic, but just kind of going back to that childhood, just being like a little self-conscious about like my body's different and like clothes fit a little differently, but like my body probably needed those extra calories for running, and like my body probably doesn't want to get injured again, because I did have a lot of injuries when I was running in high school because I was underweight.
Yeah.
So just like being comfortable with that, and I mean it's still new and it's still like your body changes and it feels different, but like it's still working great. Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that part's important. Like you want it to be able to function, and to function, like
Yeah.
it needs nutrients, it needs energy. But yeah, you're training for a marathon. That's like how many calories are you burning running? Like you need to be
Goodness.
eating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think that point about it's like on one hand, we already deal with like the internal self criticism or just hyper awareness of how we look. But then if you're getting external opinions as well, that only, I feel like, exacerbates everything. I think for me, my experience is different just because of my genes. And okay, how do I explain this? So, like, I have literally, I feel like, looked the same since how do I say this? I feel like I've looked the same like my whole life.
Like your body hasn't changed?
Like not like that, but like I've just always looked the same. Like I feel like I could, like my photo from preschool, like I feel like that is clearly me. Like I look the same. Not like not like exactly the same, but you know what I'm saying. Like you see people and you're like, oh, you were a child in that photo and now yeah. Like I just feel like generally I've like looked the same, and I just am naturally small because of my genes. And like I think as I got older, I was like, is this wrong? Should I not be like this? Should I be eating more? I remember like during COVID, actually, like the lockdown, I feel like I gained more weight just unexpectedly, probably because you're more sedentary. I don't know. I was at home, so I was definitely eating more than I was eating in college. And like I remember people, like I remember on my birthday actually, which was later that summer, people were commenting on it like in a positive way. And they was like, oh, like you look good. Like, I don't know what they were saying.
Yeah.
But then I went back to college after lockdown was over and I lost all that weight that I gained. And I think I was feeling like weird. I was like, am I doing something wrong? Is something wrong with me? Like, why am I losing all this weight? Should I be eating more? And then I was just like more aware of it. Like it was on my mind more. And it's hard to tell anyone, oh, this is the way that you should look, or this looks good on you. Like you should stay like this, because naturally our bodies are just going to do what they want. I think obviously what's most important is that you're healthy. But yeah, I think like the perception of other people and what they seek has like a big impact.
I feel
unfortunately.
like the lesson here is like, don't comment on other people's bodies. I mean, I can't think of when it would be appropriate to comment on someone's body, like on their weight specifically.
I feel like it's hard because sometimes you think it's a compliment, right?
Yeah.
Not when you're like criticizing how somebody looks. I feel like, yeah, keep those comments to yourself. But like, if you feel like, oh, like you look good, like did you lose weight or something like that?
Yeah.
I feel like it's easy to feel like, oh, this is just me giving you a compliment, but you don't know how much weight is already on their minds.
And like maybe that's the comment, because I remember there was a comment that it wasn't like their fault, but like that was the comment that like triggered this thing in my mind where I was like, oh yeah, like I do look good and like I don't have to lose more weight, but as long as I don't gain any weight, like I'll be perfect. So it was just like, I don't know, I don't want to be that last straw of someone like deciding to not eat chocolate cake. You know what I mean? Like me be the reason. Because like this comment was made like at a summer camp, and I like basically was starving myself, and unintentionally. Like I thought I was being healthy. I thought I was like avoiding the calf food and eating my perfect righteous whatever food. I put all these like I made it like almost biblical.
Wow.
Almost like, oh, I'm eating like the Daniel way, or like
like only like whole foods, whole grains,
but I made it like good versus bad, which is not the way to categorize food. Anyways, but I was like so hungry and so ready to just eat some chocolate cake, and someone made a comment and I was like, okay, that's gonna keep me going. But I was starving.
Yeah. It's hard and it's unfortunate. So can you talk more about what kind of led you to become a dietitian and like study nutrition?
Yeah, it was mostly because, I mean, it started with like, I don't want to be a misinformed consumer anymore. Like I am so sick of diet culture and hearing about that. And I want to help people who are like me. So that's kind of how it started. Yeah. And then it grew into something kind of bigger than myself. It grew into like loving public health and loving, I don't know. I probably still, while I was studying nutrition, I probably still was really struggling, honestly, if I think about it. But it became less about me and like healing from that eating disorder and like trying to find the answers or whatever. And it became more about like, oh, I'm going to like try to give back now. And I'm going to try to work in public health and work with food insecurity and not just work with like body image, even though that's like a passion of mine. And like I did a lot at my school for that. I was president of Body Positive, and like we did a scale smash event, and that was like super cool. And so like I got to do that on the side, and I like took a class on it, but that's not necessarily what I want to do for like my career.
Yeah, and I love how it's expanded in that way, that you're like making an impact just in the field of nutrition in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's awesome. I guess like I'm interested in the impact of like confidence on our self-perception as well, because I think in a lot of ways you hear, oh, however you look, as long as you carry yourself confidently, like it doesn't matter. But then it's hard because I feel like the way you think you look impacts your confidence, for better or worse, if that makes sense. So it seems like they are tied to each other. And I think it doesn't help in this day and age where social media is just like everywhere, and images of what you should look like are everywhere, as like quote unquote should. And it's always changing as well, which is also ridiculous because it's like
It's confusing, you know?
But that idea of like, okay, yeah, your body's never going to be a trend, right?
Yeah.
Because like maybe it will be trending, quote unquote, for one season, and
Yeah.
then the next season it'll be out, and then are you suddenly not gonna like your body, which is like a natural thing that you literally cannot change? I don't know. I feel like it's just this idea of like, oh, I have to go to the gym to like build this like perfect body, right? That I see. But the reality is, like I said, it goes back to genetics. Like your being in the gym can only take you so far.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you just naturally do not have that figure, which is totally fine because there are different figures for a reason. Like going to the gym and like killing yourself to like have this sort of ideal body is just like not possible. And that's why like plastic surgery has become such a huge thing. But yeah, I think it's really toxic, and I don't know how else to articulate.
Well, also like it's hard. There's the unrealistic standard, which really is unrealistic because maybe they're taking drugs, like maybe they're doing other things that are getting them to that figure. And you know, Ozempic's on the market now. Bodybuilders have steroids going on. Like there's all these other things that people might be trying to do it naturally, but you don't know, like you don't know their regimen. Like you don't know, they might be doing all these other things on the like under the table and advertising it as like, oh, this is my workout routine. If you do this, you'll look like me. Like, no, that's not how it is. Like, it's a combination of genetics, maybe drugs, you know, like potentially.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. It's so much. And so it's also like just setting yourself up for disappointment, right?
Yeah.
Because you have this idealized image and you're like working towards that, and it may never be actually attainable.
Right.
But yeah, because of like social media and just the access we have to those things. And yeah, I just think it goes back to that idea of wanting to be healthy, right? Whatever that looks like for you, because for everybody, healthy looks different. But I feel like there's a way to be rational about, oh, how much am I just striving for something that maybe like is not even necessary?
And one thing I learned throughout my journey in having an eating disorder is I was always so concerned on, you know, the phrase happy and healthy. I mean, I don't know if it's a phrase, but like, let's be happy and healthy. I was always so concerned about just the healthy part that I was miserable. When eventually I was like, I'm going to focus on, like, I need to be happy again. Sometimes it's healthier to also be happy and healthy. Happiness is healthy. Sometimes being a little less, quote unquote, like righteous. I mean, that's how I framed food. So that's what I mean by like less righteous. But like sometimes in my case, having a candy bar or having whatever would have been happier. And in that case, would have made it healthier than what you think black and white is healthy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. That's a great point. And it's like achieving that balance. But back to the confidence thing, I just feel like it's interesting that you mentioned that you would be open to talking about this topic, because I've just been more aware, I feel like, of how I look lately than I feel like I have in the past. Or like maybe I feel like it fluctuates like in different seasons.
Yeah.
And maybe everyone is like this. I think a lot of times we just think it's just us, which is also why I want to talk about this, because I feel like it's definitely not just us. I feel like it's just natural, because that's just how you show up in the world. Yeah, but just this hyper awareness. And I think like hyper awareness is not always a good thing, because then it's just like what is on your mind and it's what you're thinking about. And like, okay, for example, this is like a small example, but the other day I was breaking out kind of, and like, you know, like this was like hormonal, and it really was not a big deal. But I think to me, because I hadn't broken out like that in a while, I was like, oh my gosh. And the whole day I was just thinking about that, and I was talking to people, and that's what I was thinking about. And like, you can't even fully be present in that conversation if you're so aware of like something like that, because people are looking at you and you're like, oh my gosh, they're looking at me, and that this pimple is,
this is all they see.
No, literally, this pimple is all they see. And it's so crazy because I got home that day, and like, I think that night I was like washing my face, and I was like, what was I so, I looked at myself and I was like, it literally is not even as big of a deal as my like mind was making it. And I just thought that was so sad, because I spent my whole day, like my mental energy was like going to that thing that is like really nothing. But I was able to make it such a big thing. Yeah, so I guess how do you kind of take control of those thoughts that can like really just balloon into something that they don't have to be? And just like being so hyper aware of yourself.
I think just like recognizing it at first. I know there's so many therapy answers I could give, but like recognizing it and holding that captive and like, okay, why am I worried about this? Like what's the deeper message? Like what am I worried about? And then just affirming like, okay, if we're talking about acting, like everyone gets these. Hopefully it'll go away. If it doesn't, like it's okay. Like it's just there's so much more to who you are than an insecurity you might have. There's so much more to Danielle than like maybe a pimple that like I didn't even notice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think kind of what you're touching on is like, what are you basing your confidence in? Right?
Yeah.
Because if your confidence is in your self image, and I feel like it's a natural thing to gain confidence from. But if that is where all your confidence is coming from, like it will so easily be,
Yeah.
destroyed, or there will be so many like hills and valleys. Like it's not sustainable because your appearance will change naturally. And it kind of reminds me of this book, The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness. And it's not necessarily about appearance, but it touches on like ego and just like how we don't notice something in ourselves until it's bruised or it's hurt. And then when something is hurt, then you like are always thinking about it. So like you're not thinking about yourself necessarily all the time until your like ego is bruised in some way. And so maybe that like comes back to that idea of body image. Like if that is a sore spot for you and you are not happy with it, then you're always going to be thinking about it. And anyways, the point of the book is not about thinking less of yourself, but about thinking of yourself less, which is interesting phrasing. But thinking about yourself less is in like you're not constantly like putting yourself on trial, like measuring your worthiness by your achievements or what other people think about your perceptions. And it's a Christian book, so the summary is that like basing your self-worth in Christ, because he defines your worth and your value, not yourself or like what you do or how you look or anything like that. Yeah, but I think it just comes full circle back to that point of confidence and like where it's rooted.
Right. Praise you for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes, Psalm 139. It's a good one. I feel like it's something that you have to remind yourself of, you know? Because one day you'll be like, yeah, like I'm on top of the world. I'm not thinking about anything related to, or like you're not even conscious of it, but you just like are going through life and existing without being so aware of yourself. And then like something can happen and then it comes back to the forefront. It's, I think, something you constantly have to remind yourself of. Yeah. And I guess on that topic, what advice or encouragement would you give someone who is struggling with their body image or their relationship with food?
I would say a couple of things. So, first, if you have insurance, talk to someone, like talk to a therapist, talk to a registered dietitian. Like, there are experts here for a reason.
Yeah.
And also, pray about it. And I would say, like, intuitive eating is such a confusing, like, what does that mean? Like, eat intuitively, right? There's so many different exercises all over the place on how to eat intuitively, but basically it's like going back to the senses, and like taste is one of your five senses, like smell, sight, all the things. Also, another thing about intuitive eating that I need to like make a note about is it's kind of, it comes from a place of privilege, because if you're food insecure and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you can't necessarily like eat when you want. But like, let's say you do have the resources to be able to eat how you were when you were a kid and not worry about those things, not worry about like, okay, maybe today, like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go eat this, or like, yeah, like maybe I'm not super hungry, but like my friends are eating and like it's a social occasion and I'm gonna have cake today, like it's no big deal. But like as you grow and you realize like, oh, I should be self-conscious of these things. It's okay to have different reasons for eating food, like just being mindful of it. So I actually use this app called ATE, and it's like a photo diary, so I'm not like tracking calories or anything. It's kind of fun because I'm taking a picture and it's like reminding me to eat like every 3 to 5 hours is like how often we should eat. Like if you're awake, but it's just a good way to see when I'm eating, and like you can answer quiz questions about, not quiz questions, but like it asks you like, okay, why did you eat? And I could say like a multitude of different things. I could say I ate because it was time, or I ate because I was hungry, or I ate because I was stressed. And you could eat for more than one of those reasons at once. And it's just like finding that balance of things. Like if every time you eat it's because you're stressed, then like maybe it's time to reassess. Like, and let's try to find a way, like if I'm at work, maybe try to find a way to eat away from the desk. Just to like be more mindful around your meal, and maybe not associate food with stress.
Yeah.
Because even if you're not like doing it intentionally, like that could lead to that. And then body image is hard. I would say like definitely the clothes you wear matter, in that if that thing doesn't fit you, then like get a larger size. That's okay. Or get a smaller.
Yeah.
Get whatever size fits you and you feel comfortable and confident in. And maybe the thing of clothing isn't your style, or maybe it just doesn't make you feel confident, and then don't buy it. Try to wear what you feel comfortable and confident in. And that like makes a big difference. Because there's been times that I've tried to like squeeze into jeans that like didn't fit me, and like it messes up your day.
Yeah.
Like it could be like 5 items of clothing, but stuff that like you feel your best in makes a difference on your body image, I think.
Yeah, that is great advice. Especially that app. I'm going to get it. But yeah, that is such great advice. Okay, starting with the food part, because I feel like I have a fast metabolism. So I do notice that I'm hungry a lot, but I don't like mentally, I'm like, why am I hungry again? So then I'll just eat a snack or something and it's probably not enough. And then I'm like easily hungry again. And so I think tracking when I'm eating, why I'm eating something. Is it because I'm hungry? Is it because I'm bored? Or is it because I feel like I should be eating? And even just knowing like, okay, it's okay if you get hungry every 3 hours. Like that's normal.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
So I think that's great advice. And then especially the wearing what fits. Like that time I told you that I had gained weight and then I lost it. I was wearing the clothes that I had bought when I was a larger size, and it was not helping my confidence.
Right.
Wearing
Exactly.
wearing clothes that don't fit. And then in my head I'm like, oh well, I'll just gain the weight back so I can fit into these clothes. No. Yeah. I ended up just being like, I'm gonna buy clothes that fit because this is ridiculous, you know?
Yeah. And again, it's such like third world like both the intuitive eating and like even body image. Like if you think about like buy clothes that fit, like you can't give advice like that to every single person because like maybe they can't afford clothes that fit. So like that's a different, I don't know the answers to that, but like that's more complicated than what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like if you have the resources to like buy clothes that fit, then do it. Don't put yourself through all the issues that could come with like, you know, it's like that you're in this cycle of like every single day I'm going to put clothes on that remind me of this almost bad memory in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Another thing I would say, and I heard this on a podcast, I can't remember what, but basically she was talking about the importance of loving yourself as you are before anything changes, in the sense that like, you know, we all have goals in all areas of our lives, and like as the new year is coming, a lot of people have health goals, but it's like making the decision, like the conscious decision, and like you constantly have to do it, but like to love yourself as you are right now before anything changes. She's like, I have to love myself. And so it's like that thing about, okay, maybe you do want to gain weight, but it's like before I gain any pound, I still love myself as I am. And if I never gain another pound, like that's okay. So I think that has really stuck with me, and just remembering that. Or it's like, oh, I want to be able to lift. I don't lift weights, but you know,
50 pounds.
Whatever,
I don't know.
yeah, whatever.
I'm just making something up.
Whatever it is, like I want to be ripped. Like I want to be able to lift 50 pounds. But before that even happens, as I am right now, you know, it's fine. And I think that helps, in like maybe it's a healthier mindset when you go into, because I don't want it to be like all the things we're saying is like don't change or don't have goals. Like I'm not saying it's bad to have things that you aspire for, you know, that are healthy. that's not bad. That's why the whole health and wellness businesses and like
That's how they started.
creators, and that's why they exist, because there is a desire for this, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But I think a way to go about it in a healthy way. And obviously, like you could say, okay, but that's a high bar telling me to just love myself as I am right now. But I think for me, it's also knowing that God loves me as I am right now. And literally, this was like a few weeks ago. I think I was just in my head about different things, and not necessarily body image, but like I said, I've looked I've looked the same. Okay.
So she has to add pictures now of her in preschool. That's required.
But in the sense that like I look young.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that all the time. People always tell me you look young. So I think this is like one of the things I was in my head about, like, oh, is it wrong that I look this young? You know, usually they're like trying to compliment me. They're like, oh my gosh, like you're going to look so good when you get older, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay. But right now I'm 25 and I don't want people treating me like I'm 15. But anyways, I was like in my head about all these things. And I feel like God was like, I don't make mistakes. Like this thing that you feel like maybe is kind of an annoyance in some ways, like yes, a blessing, but like also an annoyance. I didn't make a mistake about that. And so I think maybe that's an encouragement in us, like learning to love ourselves. Like everything is so intentional. Even the things that we feel like we're struggling with related to our body image, maybe those are ways for you to learn to love yourself, or ways for God to show you his love, you know, through those hard things. So yeah, that's something that I've learned recently. And then I would say, get off social media.
Okay, this is going to sound so controversial and so crazy, but like, I think it's okay to block people. Like, if you need to for your mental health, there are people who I used to stalk all the time.
Like famous people? Or?
Yeah. I mean, famous enough for me to like know who they were. And like, again, I was like, oh my goodness, she is so beautiful. She has this perfect life. She has, you know, this body. And it was just unhealthy for me. And like, nothing against her at all. But it was just unrealistic for me. And just in my headspace, I just couldn't. And you can't block people in real life, right? Like if you see this person in real life, like it's not like I can just hit a block, like, oh, I don't need to see that. But like, it's social media. I don't interact with this person. Like it's okay for me to block them. Why not?
Yeah. So you don't impulsively like look them up.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's very true, especially because it is social media and it's something that you can control. So when I'm saying like get off of it, if you know that it's just a struggle for you to be on Instagram and every time you're on there, you're seeing things that like are making you feel more insecure about yourself, then yeah, either unfollow those people. You don't want to unfollow because that's dramatic. Mute them. Then you don't have to see them.
I've done that before too because they're in my social circle enough for me like not to be able to unfollow them, but like I muted them.
Yeah, mute them or just like get off that thing completely, because I just think it is never worth your mental health. Social media. Like nothing other people are doing is really that deep that you need to know.
Yeah. And like if you're close enough to like.
Yeah, if you're close enough to them, you would already know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And then I guess just like talking about it like we're doing now, I feel like it's helpful to externalize things. I think especially when it comes to like body image and relationship with food, we kind of just keep it to ourselves. Like it's a lot. It's very internal, like an internal battle. But when you're able to externalize it, those big things don't seem so big anymore. But even if they still do, at least you're not like carrying it on your own. You know, someone else can talk through it with you, can talk you down when it's really stressing you out or like upsetting you. Yeah.
Like back to the goals kind of thing is like, yes, I'm training for a marathon, but there is a time where, I mean, yesterday was my first run for the first time in 2 weeks and I was injured and I didn't know if I was going to be able to run this marathon I was going to do. And I ran yesterday pain-free and it was amazing. Like after seeing the doctor, after getting an MRI, after all these things. But like if I had decided to not take those 2 weeks off and like just keep running through the pain, because when I grew up, I always heard no pain, no gain, which like to a certain extent, you want to push yourself to a certain extent. So if we're talking about physical, like you can overdo the exercising to the point you're injured. And you can overdo like eating to the point, not you're injured, but like you can overdo it where it's just not healthy anymore. Like, it's not happy. It's just isolated, healthy. Like, you don't have friends, you don't have your life anymore because it's just food and it's just how you look. And that's not what life is supposed to be about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it took a lot, right, for you to be like, okay, I just can't do this thing that I like. I have this goal that I want to achieve and I can't work towards it. Like maybe you felt like that was like a setback, but it was necessary, right, for you to heal and like to be able to do that thing and not end up in a worse position. So I think that's a great point. On that, I think it's also okay for there to be things that you opt out of.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. In the sense of like, okay, let's just use running because you're talking about running.
Yeah.
I think running is really big right now. Okay? It's like in, like everyone's running.
Yeah, New York Marathon. That was great. Yeah.
Especially if you live, in a walkable city, you always see people running. And there's run clubs. That's like a social activity now. And me personally, I don't run. I don't run. And it's not like I can't run, but I think I know that that is not my preferred activity. I know that like a lot of cardio, I will burn so many calories and I already have a high metabolism and I just can't sustain like the amount of food I would need to be eating and also running and like not disappear. You know what I'm saying? like I'm just being honest. Like it's just too much. And so like I just opt for other things.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally fine. And so whatever that looks like for you, like some people love running, but then they don't want to, I don't know, dance. Maybe they're like, I don't want to dance. I'm not flexible and like I don't have any desire to be, and I don't enjoy that.
Yeah. You can't even do everything. Like that's impossible.
Yeah. I think all that to say, like, don't feel bad if
opting out.
Yeah, like opting out of something just because like you just know. It's like intuitive. What's the word? I'm gonna come up with something. It's intuitive exercising.
I know, like mindful. I mean, there's mindful or like gentle movement of like being gentle to yourself and like yoga.
But yeah, like if you don't enjoy it, like don't kill yourself. Like don't become a gym girl and kill yourself just because it seems like that's what everyone's doing. Oh my gosh, so embarrassing. Did I tell you about the gym membership I had at one point?
No, what happened?
Oh my gosh. This is a perfect example. So there was one season of my life where I was like, I'm going to be a gym girl because I think I was on TikTok. I saw all the girls working out, drinking shakes. I was like, that could be me. Like easy. And I got a gym membership. Okay. And I remember I was telling my mom I got a gym membership and she was like, why did you get a gym membership? Like, what are you doing there? And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. Even though I knew that I was not a gym person. Like I need a class. I need a workout class where someone is like telling me what to do. And there's other people around me. Like I don't want to walk into a gym by myself. I'm like intimidated. I don't know how to use the machines. I don't want to learn. I don't want to find them. I just don't want to do it. But I was like, no, this is it. I'm gonna do it. I bought the membership. I went once. I think, because that was like a free session with a personal trainer, your first time. And I truly do not think maybe I went one other time. And I had that membership for like at least 3 months.
Oh no.
Yeah. Drained all my money on this gym membership and I never went. Yeah. So don't be like me.
That just made me think of kind of back to clothing. And you know how some people buy their goal outfit or like their goal size and they'll be like, okay, I want to be a size whatever. And I'm going to buy this and it's going to hang in my closet as like inspiration. That's just like so scary to me.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you can necessarily get to that size.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, maybe you can lose so much weight, but like maybe genetically and like your height and your whatever, like maybe you can't get there and it's okay. Like back to what you were saying, like love yourself as you are right now. And like maybe if you do get to that size, okay, cool. Like make sure you're doing it at like a decent rate and like, you know, you're making sure you're still like at a healthy BMI and stuff, but like don't just like have it hanging in the closet as like almost torture for you.
Yeah. I think that's very true. And it's like I don't think it's a bad thing to like maybe admire the way other people look, right? Like, I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think it's not a good thing to covet the way they look or like want to look like that. You know, like you can admire the way someone looks without feeling like, oh, that is what the goal should be for me.
Yeah. Like I'm will always be 5'10", like.
Right, yeah. Like, I can admire people that are taller than me, like you, and be like, oh my gosh, that's great. But like, I'm not going to kill myself to be taller because it's just not happening.
I mean, you can stand on stilts, but like, I don't know.
So is there anything else you wanted to say on this topic that you haven't gotten a chance to?
No, back to everything we said, like, I don't know. I think there's a way, if someone makes a comment that's like triggering for you, I think there's a way to like, to call them out for it and be like, hey, I don't appreciate that. Or like, hey, can we not talk about weight? I think I had to do that. I think, I don't remember exactly because it was so long ago, but I'm pretty sure that when I first went home after like gaining weight in college, that I went home, I was like, hey, can we not talk about my weight? Because it was triggering for me. And it was something that was like really hard. And I knew that was what my mom was going to be focused on because like that's what she had been focused on before. So I think it's okay to like just call people out for saying, I mean, if someone said something like, I mean, sometimes they don't realize it. They don't realize that it's something triggering.
Yeah.
Or they don't realize, or like, I mean, the times are changing and we're trying to be more body positive and more open-minded.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point of just like speaking up for yourself in that sense so that they know and they don't continue to like say things that hurt you. Because if you don't say something, sometimes they think they're trying to help or like they think they're doing something good and they would never know. So that is really important to find a way to say it. Yeah, even if it's just like, I would prefer not to talk about that right now.
Yeah, because it's probably coming from like fine intentions. I mean, your grandma is,
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't have bad intention.
Yeah. Okay. How have things changed for you now that you have, learned that it's normal for your body to change? You've learned to develop this happy, healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's not perfect, but I don't find my identity in what size I am, like what I don't really like when I look in the mirror, I don't like necessarily like perceive my body. Like, sure, I might be like bloated one day and be like, oh my goodness, like this is uncomfortable. But for the most part, I'm not like focusing in on the way my stomach is looking or whatever. So that's changed a lot. And another thing, just I'm able to like, okay, what do I feel like eating today? And I have the resources to be able to do that. Or like, oh, what do I have in the kitchen? Like, I'm hungry. Yes, I had dinner, but like I need a little midnight snack or I need a little extra food, and just being okay with that.
Yeah.
So that has really changed a lot, and like not being so worried about ingredients and like finding that happiness and like being happy and healthy has been like such a big change for me, because it used to just be very isolated and very unhappy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I'm so thankful to Avery for her vulnerability and wisdom on this complicated topic. There's obviously so much we didn't touch on when it comes to body image, but I've learned that it's a daily decision to choose to detach your worth from your appearance and love yourself as you are right now. A simple step that you can start today is to just be more mindful of the thoughts you think about yourself and the words you say about your appearance. The book of Proverbs talks about how our speech has the power of life and death, so please speak kindly to yourselves and to others. Everything we mentioned during this episode is listed in the description box, along with a few helpful resources, so be sure to check that out. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on our conversation. You can reach me via Instagram at the Making Space Podcast, where you should also follow for more content. Thank you again for a wonderful season 2. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave a rating or review wherever you listen. Also, click the follow button so you're notified when the podcast returns, and share this episode with someone who would benefit from hearing our conversation. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode of Making Space. Bye!